Have you ever looked around your life and wondered quietly, when did everything start revolving around them? Not in a joyful, proud parent kind of way, but in a tired, slightly invisible way. If you're in your 60s, 70s, or even well into your 80s, there's a chance that your life today looks very different from what you once imagined for your golden years. Maybe it's filled with obligations, favors, and last-minute requests, all coming from the people you love the most, your children. Now, don't get me wrong. Love is powerful. It drives us to do incredible things. But sometimes, without even realizing it, we start giving so much that we slowly begin to disappear. Not all at once, but bit by bit. You cancel an appointment. You skip your morning walk. You push aside that long-planned vacation, and you tell yourself, it's just this once. But then, just once becomes a pattern, and that pattern becomes your life. Today, I want to talk to you, not as a coach, not as an expert, but as someone who truly sees you, about how love can quietly turn into sacrifice, and how sacrifice, when left unchecked, can quietly steal your peace. We're going to explore 5 subtle but powerful signs that you may be living for your children in a way that is no longer balanced or healthy. Not to shame, not to blame, but to help you gently take back your time, your strength, and your joy. So, let's sit down together, maybe with sign number 1, a warm cup of tea, and begin with something many of us have felt but rarely say out loud. You're always putting their needs above your health. You wake up with a sore back, but still drive across town because your daughter needs someone to watch the kids for a few hours. You feel lightheaded because you skipped lunch, but you don't want to be late helping your son move into his new place. You've had to reschedule your own doctor's appointment again because something came up for them. It seems harmless, even generous. You love helping. You're proud to be needed. But over time, something changes. You start to notice that your energy is never enough, that your body is calling for rest, and you're not listening. That the things you used to love, the things that made you feel alive, have been put on hold indefinitely. And you start to forget when exactly you stopped living your own life and started managing theirs. You might tell yourself it's only temporary. You might even believe that's what parents do. But when temporary becomes routine, when generosity becomes exhaustion, that's when you have to pause and ask, is this still love, or is it something else? Take Linda, a warm-hearted 74-year-old grandmother from Indiana. When she retired, she looked forward to quiet mornings and time with friends. But when her daughter returned to work, Linda stepped in to care for her 3 young grandchildren 5 days a week. Just for a while, she said. But 5 years later, Linda was still clocking in close to 40 hours of unpaid, exhausting work each week. Her book club faded away. A planned trip with old friends never happened. And when asked what she missed the most, Linda quietly said, "I miss me." That kind of quiet loss, the kind no one sees because you never complain, is one of the clearest signs that something isn't right. And here's the tricky part. Your kids may not even realize it. If you've never said no, they assume you're always available. If you smile through the pain, they assume you're fine. They're not being selfish, but they're also not seeing the full picture because you're not showing it. Sign number 2. It's a hard but loving question we must all ask at some point. Am I doing this because I truly want to, or because I'm afraid of what might happen if I stop? Let that settle for a moment. Breathe it in. You deserve to ask yourself that question, and you deserve an honest answer. Another sign you may be living for your children too much is that guilt shows up every time you try to say no. Even when your reasons are solid, even when your body or your heart is saying, "Please, not today," you still say yes because the thought of disappointing them feels unbearable. You tell yourself you're just being kind, but deep down, you're not saying yes out of joy or willingness. You're saying yes out of fear. Fear of being judged, misunderstood, or worse, unloved. There's a quiet kind of emotional conditioning that happens when we equate saying no with failure. Many of us, especially those of us raised to be dependable and selfless, carry this invisible burden. We were taught that being a good parent means always showing up, always giving, always being there, even if it costs us everything. But you know what? That's not love. That's guilt wearing a very convincing disguise. I think of Frank, a retired teacher from Texas, who spent every Sunday driving 2 hours each way to mow his son's lawn. He did it for years, in heat and in cold, even when his knees started bothering him. He didn't say anything. Not until one day, when he could barely walk afterward, did he mention to his son that the trips were getting harder. His son was surprised. "I just thought you liked doing it," he said. That moment hit Frank hard. Not because his son meant any harm, but because Frank realized he had never once expressed how difficult it had become. He had suffered in silence, not because he was asked to, but because he believed that's what love required him. If you've ever done the same, said yes with a heavy heart, ignored your own limits to keep the peace, or felt a lump in your throat just from trying to say, "I need to rest," then you know how painful and quiet that guilt can be. But here's the truth. Love that requires your silence is not love. Saying no when your body or spirit needs it isn't a betrayal. It's a form of honesty and deep, self-respecting care. And yes, the first time you set a boundary, it may feel uncomfortable. They may react, but you are not responsible for their reaction. You are responsible for your well-being, for your voice, for your peace. So, if any of this feels familiar, if you felt your needs slipping into the shadows of everyone else's, know that you are not alone. You're not weak, you're not selfish, you're simply human. And it's okay, more than okay, to want your life back. Let's take a deep breath together. You've made it this far. You've given so much. And now, slowly, gently, it's time to begin giving back to yourself. There's something incredibly tender about realizing you spent years putting someone else first. It's not regret. Not exactly. It's more like a quiet awakening. A moment when you see your reflection a little more clearly and realize you've been fading in the name of love. Sign number 3. That brings us to another place where many older parents find themselves without ever intending to, continuing to give financial support even when it stretches your own limits. Now, helping your children in tough times is natural. It's part of being a family. But when that support starts to quietly threaten your own stability, your comfort, your health, your future, it's no longer generosity. It's sacrifice, and not the healthy kind. You may not even notice it at first. Maybe it starts with covering a few bills here and there, or helping with rent during a tough month. But then, months turn into years. You start skipping the heater in winter to save on the electric bill because you've sent another $300 to your son. You begin counting your medications carefully, wondering if you can hold off on a refill just a little longer because your daughter's car broke down again and she needs help with repairs. It doesn't feel like a big deal at first. You tell yourself it's just money, but it's not. It's your peace of mind. It's your ability to breathe deeply, to rest easy, to know you'll be okay. And when you begin putting your own security in danger so someone else can feel more comfortable, it stops being an act of love and becomes a burden you were never meant to carry alone. Think about Susan. She's 74, lives alone in a modest home, and used to attend a local walking group every Thursday morning. It brought her joy, a sense of community, and a healthy routine. But after a while, she stopped going, not because she didn't want to, but because the gas money was being sent to her son each month. He was between jobs and just needed help getting on his feet. That was 3 years ago. When Susan finally brought up the idea of cutting back, her son said, "But, Mom, you always said you'd be there for me." And that's when something inside her shifted. She realized he didn't see her as someone with limits. He saw her as a lifeline, one that could never run dry. And she didn't blame him. She blamed herself for never saying, "This is as far as I can go." It's hard to change a pattern when you've spent decades playing the same role, when you've defined love as giving. Always giving, no matter the cost. But here's something you may need to hear. Your worth is not measured by how much you sacrifice. You don't have to go broke to prove you care. You don't have to delay your dreams, your comfort, or your safety to show your devotion. Love should not require you to disappear financially, any more than it should emotionally. Sign number 4. This leads us to another sign, one that's more invisible but deeply felt. You find yourself constantly adjusting your mood, your decisions, even your sense of peace, based on how your children react to you. If they call and sound cold, you wonder what you did wrong. If they don't answer your message, your mind fills in the blanks with worry. If they seem upset, you drop everything to try to fix it, even if you don't know what it is. You live on edge, walking emotional tightropes just to keep the peace. And after a while, your peace no longer belongs to you. That kind of emotional dependency doesn't happen overnight. It often starts decades earlier, when your children were small and needed you to help them manage their big feelings. But now they're adults, and you're still monitoring their temperature before you check your own. This can look like canceling lunch with a friend, just in case your daughter needs to talk, or saying yes to hosting a last-minute dinner, even when you're bone-tired, just to avoid the silence you know will come if you say no. You keep the peace, but at what cost? I remember Walter, a gentle, thoughtful 78-year-old man who shared his story during a community support circle. His son rarely called unless he needed something, and when Walter couldn't pick up right away, the message he received was always the same. Guess I'll figure it out myself. Just those few words would sink Walter into a cloud of shame. A man who had survived wars, built a business, and raised a family reduced to guilt over a missed call. That's not love. That's captivity dressed up as connection. You are allowed to breathe. You are allowed to set your own emotional rhythm. You are allowed to feel peaceful, even when someone else is upset. That's not coldness. That's maturity. And if your presence is only welcome when you're agreeable, available, and silent, that's not a relationship. That's a performance, and it's exhausting. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine waking up and choosing what your day looks like without wondering how your child will feel about it. Imagine making plans that nourish you without scanning the horizon for potential emotional storms. Imagine saying to yourself, I deserve peace, not just when everyone else is happy, but all the time. Because you do. You absolutely do. There's nothing wrong with being there for your children, but being there should not mean losing yourself. Your emotional well-being is not a gift you hand over for others to guard. It's yours, and it's sacred. So, if you found yourself shrinking, tiptoeing, editing your truth just to avoid disappointing your children, I want you to know this. Your needs matter. Your feelings matter. And love that silences you is not love. It's imbalance. Let that truth settle in your heart, not as something to feel guilty about, but as something to gently grow from. It's not always the big sacrifices that wear you down. Sometimes it's the small ones, done again and again, day after day, that quietly chip away at your sense of self. You tell yourself, it's no big deal. Just skipping one meal, just pushing through the back pain one more day, just rescheduling that long overdue appointment again. Well, when you do it often enough, it becomes more than a small favor. It becomes a way of life. Sign number 5. And that brings us to something many don't even recognize until they're deep into it. Giving up your own needs to keep the peace. It's subtle. It doesn't scream for attention, but it's one of the most exhausting forms of self-betrayal. You tell yourself you're doing it for harmony, for love, for the sake of family. But what you're really doing is erasing yourself, bit by bit, in the name of avoiding conflict. Your back hurts, but you still volunteer to help your son move because you don't want to seem unhelpful. You feel dizzy from skipping lunch, but you drive your daughter's kids across town because no one else can do it. You cancel your long-awaited massage or say no to an invitation from an old friend just in case your children might need something. And deep down, even if you won't admit it out loud, it's not love driving those choices. It's fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of being labeled selfish. Fear that if you stop overgiving, they might stop coming around. It's a quiet kind of fear wrapped in guilt and tied with a bow labeled good parenting. But fear and love are not the same thing. One lifts you up, the other drains you dry. You might say, but I've always been the one they could count on. And that's a beautiful thing. But being reliable doesn't mean being selfless to the point of suffering. You can be dependable and still have boundaries. You can love them fiercely and still choose yourself. Take Margaret. She's 74, warm-hearted and deeply devoted to her family. But one day, she collapsed from exhaustion. For the past 2 years, she'd been caring for her adult daughters, 2 children 5 days a week, while managing her own diabetes and arthritis. When someone gently asked her, "Have you ever told your daughter how tired you are?" Margaret looked down and whispered, "Oh, I couldn't do that. She might think I don't love them." That's the heartbreak. That's the cue. Somewhere along the way, Margaret had come to believe that saying I'm tired was the same as saying I don't care. And that belief cost her, not just energy, but dignity. Because love shouldn't demand silence, and care shouldn't require collapse. You've likely spent most of your life being the rock, the helper, the one who makes things work. But the truth is, your needs don't vanish just because you're getting older. In fact, now more than ever, they deserve attention. You deserve rest, not as a luxury, but as a right. You deserve to say no, not with guilt, but with grace. You deserve to choose peace, not as a reward for suffering, but as a foundation for your remaining years. The hardest part, the boundaries you never set in your 50s or 60s, often become the expectations you're trapped under in your 70s and beyond. And every time you say yes when your heart and body are crying out for a no, you reinforce the idea that your worth is tied to how much you endure. But you are not meant to live your final decades as a background character in someone else's story. You've lived long enough, given deeply enough, sacrificed beautifully enough. Now is the time to step into your own light again. You are not being selfish. You are being wise. You are being whole. You are remembering that your life is still yours. So maybe, just maybe, it's time to stop asking, what do they need from me? And start asking, what do I need for me? Because the answer to that question can change everything. Maybe it's rest. Maybe it's space. Maybe it's something as small as a morning walk with no interruptions, or as big as finally taking that trip you've postponed for 10 years. Whatever it is, you are allowed to want it, and you are allowed to choose it. Maybe some of what we've talked about today hits close to home. Maybe it stings a little, or maybe it feels like someone finally put into words what you've quietly known for years. That's okay. That discomfort isn't shame. It's clarity. It means your heart is still listening. It means you're still in there somewhere, beneath the layers of overgiving, still yearning to be seen, heard, and honored. If you've recognized even one of these signs in your life, I want you to know something important. It's not too late. You don't need permission to change. You don't need anyone's approval to start honoring your needs. You can still reshape the way your family relates to you. You can still build new boundaries, not walls, but gentle fences that protect your energy, your time, your sanity. You can still take back your days, your choices, your worth. Love that costs you your freedom isn't love. It's imbalance. And you were never meant to carry the weight of everyone else's life while setting your own aside. You are not here to cushion everyone else's chaos. You are here to live fully, freely, joyfully. So be brave enough to speak up, be wise enough to rest, and be kind enough to yourself to start choosing you. Not someday. Today. Because this life, it still belongs to you. Thank you for spending your time with me. I hope something in this conversation gave you a little spark, a little push to take one small step back toward yourself. If it did, I'd love to hear from you. Share one thing that resonated with you in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss content created just for you. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep making videos that honor your life, your voice, and your journey. You matter. You matter. Your story matters. And the best chapters might still be ahead. Here's to living your best life on your terms and with your whole heart.